better never rests.
Counting careless in the sky. What a thrilling time to be alive.
What is up, everybody? It is the Georgia Show in the AM, Thursday morning, 8:49 a.m. Rusty Mansell and I are with you right now. Got a lot to talk about, man. I got that radio programmed in me from yesterday, the telling the time and all that stuff. Roos and I did the Bill Shank show, and I got used to every segment, doing the time, so that kind of just flowed right out. But what's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Coffee. I need to just pour it straight in my eyes. So
yeah,
sleepy, man. I don't know why. I guess it's this weather terrible. It's raining. It's supposed to rain all week. I'm done. I'm done with January.
Me too, man.
Done. I'm done. We can move on.
Yeah, January has been something else, and it's always crazy. This weather, man, it does the same thing to me. It makes me want to sleep. I went to bed like 9:30 last night, and I woke up tireder than I have all week long. I woke up just so sleepy, like I need to go back to bed. But you can't. It never rests. And man, I tell you what, Rusty, I look back in the contact period. Tomorrow will be two weeks since the contact period opened. So it's, so let's say 13, 14, this is the 14th day it's been open. Mm-hmm. Kirby Smart has been on the road for 12 of those days, excluding Saturday and Sunday of last week whenever he was kind of in town. It blows my mind. It blows my mind how much he's been on the road.
So we had him yesterday. We had him in North Carolina. We had him in South Carolina. And then obviously he's on TV last night, sitting front row at the basketball game.
Yeah, so, right.
I mean, just think about a day like that, and traveling and seeing people and seeing kids. And so, yeah, it's the one thing I'll say about Kirby, man. The dude is wired different. And I think that, everybody I talk to that works for him, like he listen, the guy can't work a green egg, guy don't cut grass, but the dude recruits, and he never stops. Never.
Oh, that's funny. Guy don't know how to work a green egg.
Okay. There's no way for Kirby Smart's contract. There's no way he could start it, light it, and get the offset plate.
Get that heat deflector in there.
Oh, no way. Let me ask you this. If you take the Georgia staff, we got 10 on the field guys?
Yeah.
10 on the field guys, and you had to pick 2 that could log in and pay their cable bill within 1 hour. Which ones would you take?
I'm taking Todd Hartley off the top, because Todd's young. He probably doesn't really remember a pre-internet era like Mike Bobo and Kirby and those guys do. I'm taking Todd Hartley off the top for sure. Yeah.
I would probably take Stacy Searles.
Okay.
I would take Searles because we're about the same age. We grew up the same. I believe Searles in 1 hour could log in and pay his cable bill. The rest of them, they have no chance. No way.
That's funny.
No way.
That's a good point, man. That's a good point. And listen, you probably a little less so than me, because you do have a lot going on. Like I'm a little bit of a stay-at-home husband in some ways, that's real foreign to me, because I pay a lot of the bills and I take care of a lot of stuff because I'm on the internet all day. Yeah, so, it's one of those things that cracks me up, though. That's a really good point. I think Todd Hartley can handle it. I think he, I
don't know, man. I don't know. Hartley's he's younger now. It's gonna take some experience to dial that 1-800 number to say, hey, this is me dialing in and I'm trying to change that password.
That's true.
Password. That's the hardest part, is getting the damn password, So
yeah.
I'd go with Searles, and I'd probably go with Dale McGee. I feel like my man.
Yeah.
I feel like Dale's handled that DirecTV payment a couple of times.
Dale probably tracks it. Like, he's probably got a little spreadsheet that he tracks it. Like, hey, listen, that thing went up 12 cents last month. Okay, we need to get this fixed.
0.0 chance Kirby Smart could pay a cable bill within 1 hour. 0.
And that's because, man, like, listen, to whom much is given, much is expected. And
he's wired to recruit now. And
they make a lot. They make a lot of money, and they know their livelihood depends on that. And listen, it's a philosophical thing. It's not rare. Okay. I'm not sitting here saying it's rare that a coach places a giant emphasis on recruiting. Everybody knows how much recruiting means.
Yeah.
It's that some programs live for it. Like some programs, just you're like, man, listen, there's nothing more important during certain times of year than recruiting. And it's always one of the most important things. Sometimes it's the most important thing. All the time, it's one of the top 2 or 3 most important things you've got going on. And that's what makes Georgia recruit the way it does. It doesn't take this special, most engaging, kind, sweet human being you've ever met to recruit well. It takes a relentless effort and drive to do it. And listen, Kirby's got it in a way that just so many people don't.
Oh, dude, he is. I would say that I don't know a head coach that gets after it like he does. I'm talking about involved phone calls, like you said, helicopters, and as far as I know, I think he was the first one in Georgia doing that. And think about the efficiency of a helicopter and not sitting in traffic and how many schools you can hit. And he was an alpha recruiter at Alabama. You know what I mean? Like this was a guy that, listen, he won the Rashad Evans. If he ever writes a book, the Rashad Evans is what I want to read. Like, how did he get a 5-star from Auburn High School that it was their number 1 guy? And Tim
Auburn
Watson,
legacy, I believe.
Auburn legacy. I mean, he goes in there and it's Kirby Smart versus Rodney Garner for the number. And, oh, by the way, he wound up being a first-round draft pick, so not bad. Yeah. And the story is they had a Saturday night deal, and you had to be out there at 11:59, and Kirby Smart was sitting at the door. He was not walking out that door until it was 11:59, and he wound up getting the guy. But it started for Kirby. It started, the Reuben Fosters and Kirby. A lot of people Kirby's the one that signed Alvin Kamara. I mean, he was
that's the one I was going to bring up. It's the way he jumped across. I mean, him and Bobo had this kind of thing back in that day that was kind of similar in that Bobo recruited defensive backs and Bobo signed offensive linemen and defensive.
You had an area back then.
Yeah, you had an area, but you still saw mostly guys kind of gravitating toward their position. If you had an area, it wasn't common. Brian McClendon did the same thing. Brian McClendon signed Isaiah Wynn. Brian McClendon got defensive backs.
Shawnee Michelle.
Yeah, but guys outside of his position. Still, it was, but Kirby, man, the way he was able to just constantly kind of go out of state and do it was wild. I mean, it was wild.
They put Kirby in Georgia and said, you've got it, and he was a thorn in Georgia's side, no doubt. But if I ever write a book, the Malcolm Mitchell last probably 36 hours of that one. Those guys all camped out down there and trying to find out where Jay Rome and Malcolm Mitchell were going to go. That was a fun one. But Kirby Smart was there. Isaiah Crowell, Georgia, they won that one, and Kirby was in that thing to the last very second, basically. So that's where he's wired. That's where it comes from. And I've talked to a lot of people that have worked for Kirby Smart, and watch a lot of people that have worked for Kirby Smart. And so this dude that texts you at 1 a.m., man, going, hey, what's the deal on this kid? And, like 4 a.m., he's like, yeah, I'm still waiting. Like, what's wrong with this dude? But never a day off.
Yeah. And the funny thing to me is everybody, they try to make it a fault. Like, you try to deal with it. And, if you're an opposing fan, you see it a lot of times. All he cares about is recruiting and getting talent. And, they won't get coached up at Georgia. Well, I mean, sorry, they do. The championships and the NFL draft kind of proved that. But yeah, I mean, you want great players. Listen, if you're an Alabama fan or a Tennessee fan or a South Carolina fan or whatever, don't fool yourself, man. You're not going to be up there at competing for it every single year if you're not recruiting at an extremely high level. Now, I know Michigan and Clemson are a little bit of outliers. Like they didn't land the number 1 class, I don't believe, or they haven't sat there and had that. But everybody else has had like a top 2 class within their kind of that window of winning a national championship for like the past 10, 15 years.
Well,
So,
those schools you're talking about, here's a common denominator. You look at Michigan and Clemson when they were good, they had really good quarterbacks. And
really good quarterbacks and senior-led teams, like teams that retained players and kept them around for 4 or 5 years. Absolutely.
Rhett Dallas says, do you guys think Kirby has a physical and mental strength to be Nick Saban and coach in his 60s? No. Kirby Smart's not doing this in 12 years. And that's my opinion. But so if he did it 12, that would put him 8, that put him 20 years. With this particular schedule and what's on these guys, there's slim chance that Kirby Smart's doing this in 12 years. And
I do think it's going to change, though. Like I do think it's going to change because I think there are these guys want to do it. Like I think they want to do it, and they want to. One thing I do appreciate about Kirby Smart, and listen, this man has snipped at me and Palmer and everybody else in press conferences. So I mean, I've got no reason to sit here and be like, to kiss the ring on the guy. But one thing I do really admire about him is I do genuinely believe he cares about the sport and he wants to be part of the solution to this whole thing. And I think that he's a guy that now with Nick Saban out, you start to look and see who can kind of throw some weight around, who's got a big voice in that room. And Kirby's one of the guys.
So I thought about that. Saban would always use SEC Media Day to deliver a message to rules and all that kind of stuff. And, Kirby's message at SEC Media Days, we all know that we're going to know what the offseason theme was for his team. And, he always says it there, and we kind of know when he says what better never rest. We kind of knew that was the theme. And then the year before we're going to hunt, we're not going to be the hunted at Georgia. We knew that was the theme. But I do believe Kirby Smart's going to have a different message this time because number one, SEC Media Days is in Dallas, Texas. It's going to be a lot of eyes around the country because now you're going to have Texas and Oklahoma represented there. It's going to be even a bigger platform. And I think that Kirby understands that he's going to have a piece, just like you said. He's going to have a large mouthpiece in this. But I can tell you right now, I'm not speaking for Kirby Smart. I'm not speaking for all these other coaches. But if they don't find a way to make some changes, it's not as easy as going to the NFL, but it is as easy as saying, I'm done. I'm stepping away. Because these guys, they've made some money and they've been there. And at some point, it's not worth it. So for the game of college football, we all love it. Everybody loves it. I'm 100% in these kids need to get paid and get a percentage of this thing. I do think there needs to be a cap, and I think the NIL window has got to be shrunk down. It needs to be stipulations. If your head coach leaves, you get 2 weeks. And, I think, but this got to be a cap at some point. I mean, you can't – it's so deep to me, man, And I'll say this one comment, and I don't want to get off track. My biggest concern is long-term. So you take a kid that's 20 years old, and he's making $300,000 a year, Jake, and – at 26 years old, he's out of football. He doesn't have a degree, and somebody offers him a job for $60,000 with full benefits. And what does that? I mean, do you think he's going to be excited about doing that?
Man, that is a good point. I have not heard anybody mention it like that. And that's
where is that kid going to be in life when at 20 years old he peaked? Because I was 25 years old and making $60,000 a year with full benefits. I thought I was living in Hollywood.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm starting my life, but nobody's asking for your picture anymore. And mental health, man, it is a real deal. I don't want to get too deep, but
not just that, but you develop a lifestyle and expectations, and you get to a point where you're taking care of some people, and then it's hard to take care. It's hard to take care of your other people when you're making $75,000 a year. I mean, and listen, I'm not saying that's a poor living or anything like that, but it's not. It's not what you were making when you're making 3 times that.
That's real world. And not only were you making $300,000 a year, every single meal was paid for.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Every single housing bill was paid for. So it's a really slippery slope. And
$300,000 with no bills. God, man, sign me up.
With no bills.
Live like a king.
You're 20 years old. You know what I mean? And somebody's telling you, Jake, you need this protein right here. This is what you need to eat today, my man. And but it's a really slippery slope. But what's the long term going to be of this? I talked to a former Georgia coach. I talked to a guy that's a longtime assistant. He is no longer in college football. He is in the NFL. And I talked to him the other day, and the first thing he said was, Rusty, I'm worried about these players at 24 and 25 because 99.5% of them are never going to play more than 2 years in the NFL. So, you know, it is what it is, man. But but getting back to the original question, Kirby Smart's going to have an opportunity to voice his words on this, and they will not go on deaf ears. So I hope there's some changes. I hope we can get this thing under control a little bit. Certainly think that these kids deserve a piece of this pie because they can't have jobs. This is year round now, and everybody's wearing their jerseys and all this other stuff, so they deserve a piece of the pie. But we got to find a way to not hurt human beings long term. And I think that's getting shoved to the side.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things I'll point out is he kind of threw himself one off the backboard this past year at SEC Media Days whenever he talked about the burden of leadership and the burden of of speaking out. And I'm not saying he did that with that in mind, but I mean it's a good follow up, you know, to come from that, to be able to jump in there and say, listen, we got to change some things, and change needs to come quick. You know, for the betterment of the sport, for the betterment of the student athlete, and all of that stuff. And listen, I do think that after after sitting on their hands for a long time, and I'm not just blaming the NCAA, I'm blaming the coaches and everybody, you know, the administrators, everybody involved. It's not just the NCAA, but after years of sitting on their hands, I think that the NCAA kind of got shell shocked for a little bit, and now I think they're starting to come out of that and maybe try to find some pretty pragmatic solutions, and we'll see where it goes. But that's an interesting, you know, look at where this thing goes. And I do believe Kirby loves the sport of football. I mean, hearing him talk about some things that I haven't even really thought of in terms of the overall health of the game from the high school level and a lot of different things. I believe he cares about it, and I believe he's put a lot of thought into it. And we'll see if he's able to kind of be one of those voices that gets college football back to where it's a little bit more sustainable and a little bit more tenable.
I've said it. Somebody mentioned it. I don't know who mentioned it, but when I heard it, I was like, sign me up. I would love for Nick Saban to be a commissioner of college football and not have any dog in the fight, because he carries such weight and he knows exactly the ins and outs and what could be fixed and what they could do, and kind of need that. So I'd be all for that.
So listen, I don't even know if we had this plan to talk about, be honest with you, but we did it. So looking at that recruiting stuff and looking at where Kirby was yesterday, hey, he went and saw one of my favorite guys in this 2024 class, and Bryce Davis. And I've 2025 class. I had the hardest time moving from one class to the other when early in the year.
Yeah.
Bryce Davis is one of my favorites. I think he reminds me so much of Azeez Ojulari.
Great comp.
And he's like not like the 6'4", 6'5" guy, but he's long like a 6'4", 6'5" guy. Where do you think Georgia stands with him? Where do you think
they got a real chance there? Obviously, Clemson's involved, and Georgia got a real shot there, and they've done a good job. And he played with Jamal Jarrett, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, same high school, Grimsley, North Carolina. I think our guy that's on here sometimes does the DGD podcast. I think he is from that area and knows that area really well. And you know, from time to time, he would kind of keep me in the loop on some things up there. And don't see him on this morning. He'll probably watch later, but he knows a lot about that situation. And definitely, there's some. I think Georgia got a really good shot there. You know, and I love that Azeez Ojulari comparison. And you know, it didn't work out too bad for Azeez being a first rounder.
Nah, number 50 overall pick.
Second rounder,
yeah, number 50 overall pick. I mean,
his brother was first round, right? BJ.
I don't know. I really was thinking about that the other day. I couldn't remember where BJ went in the draft. I will say this though: the other guy that they went and saw, and he's far from just another guy. I think he's the next. I think he's the next kind of freak show tight end in this. Kendra Harrison. I don't know if you've seen that film. Holy crap, man! I mean, like, listen, Elias Williams is right there too. Don't get me wrong. Like, he's a Darnell Washington type, I think, and he's going to be a really good football player. But man, you watch Kendra Harrison on film, and that looks like a Kyle Pitts made over. I mean, he's something else. And you know, Georgia popped in to see him yesterday. I believe it was just Kirby Smart. I don't think Todd Hartley was able to make it there. There was some weather yesterday that might put some things in doubt, but Let's talk about another North Carolina guy here real quick, David Sanders. What about, listen, I think he's another generational. I mean, I don't want to throw around generational. I don't want to be that guy, but I think he's an elite offensive tackle. Yeah, reminds me of another guy from there that went to Florida, DJ Humphrey, back in the day from Mallard Creek. A little bit on the smaller side, but it's going to, you feel confident he's going to grow into it. I don't even know if he knows how to play football just yet, because when he does figure it out, it seems like it's going to be, the limitless ceiling on that kid.
His head coach is Chad Greer up there, and I spent some time with Chad Greer last 2 summers at a football camp down in Naples, and he just speaks volumes, just how good he is. And so we got a chance to see him last year at the Under Armour camp in Carrollton, and I hope he comes back this year, because I'd love to see his frame, see where he is. That's the only question. Like, where is he at weight wise? And like you said, I don't have any concerns there. But he's obviously got to get there, and he is special now. He is special. But the one thing I'll tell you, he is a major target for Georgia, and but they're also they're lucky that the in-state crop is just as talented this year.
Yeah,
I believe they went and saw Jackson Cantwell out in Missouri yesterday. And Charles Power loves him. I think both of his parents were Olympians, and Stacy Searles was out in Missouri yesterday to see him. So, Georgia's definitely in on some really, really good 2025s. You think Sanders could start game one? I don't think he's going to be that type of player to start like immediately. I think he's going to be one of those guys that, he plays a little bit, kind of like Broderick Jones. You know what I mean? It took Broderick Jones a little while, and then he wound up being
like Broderick Jones or Monroe Freeling, like one of those guys that comes in and he's probably not going to be big enough to just jump right in and play. That was the one thing about Andrew Thomas, is Andrew Thomas was so at 6'5", 315 pounds, was just so ready physically to come in and do what he did. And the need was there too. Don't get me wrong, but
I'll tell you how rare Andrew Thomas is. And this, you'll probably never hear this one again like this. Andrew Thomas not only started every game at Georgia, Andrew Thomas didn't get to Georgia until mid-June.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't early enroll being from a private school. So the odds of Andrew Thomas playing, I remember talking to people, and Jake, you did too, like during camp, it's like, holy, you know what, this freshman got a chance to like play.
Yeah.
And they started him at right tackle, and then they bumped him over after Isaiah Wynn. But that is so rare to start day one. And Georgia's really not built like that. But David Sanders could come to Georgia, and I would not be shocked if he doesn't. He's not a very, very good player and a high level draft pick. But if you're asking, could he start game one? Don't see that type of, he's not 6'7.5", 350 right now. He's probably 6'6.5", 265, 270, and we'll see where he is here in a couple of weeks.
Broderick Jones is a good one there too. I mean, that's kind of that, that needing a year. Monroe Freeling came in early and he did put on some weight between spring and summer, got himself in a position to jump in and play. Listen, like you said, it kind of all depends on where he's at right now. If you're sitting there and he's like 280, 285, maybe he does come in and get himself ready to play, fairly young. But listen, Andrew, I don't think we're going to see an Andrew Thomas. I can't remember anybody since that arrived in June as a true freshman and started. And it may be a long time before we see somebody do it again.
Not at Georgia.
Yeah. It may be a long time before we see somebody do that again at Georgia. It's that is hard. That is very, very difficult. 100%.
Very slim.
I can't even remember the last guy who arrived in. I guess Dylan Bell. Didn't he? Yeah, Dylan Bell arrived in the summer and contributed.
Well, yeah. I mean, now like Nate Frazier and all those guys, they'll be at Georgia in mid-May. But Pace Academy being a private school, Andrew Thomas, they weren't done until like second week in June. So
okay,
he most of the kids that came in with him, those guys were there. Those, I think was he in DeAndre Swift's class? Like those guys were, if you come in late, you're still in there, mid-May. They move you in before Memorial Day.
Uh-huh.
This guy was even like 3 weeks later than all of them. I remember thinking, I mean, you just ride him off for a while. But I did see him at the Army All-American Bowl that year, and that's when we bumped him up big time. We should have made him a 5-star. I think he was 33. We should have made him a 5-star, and there was so much discussion there. And you know, but it is what it is. But we bumped him up a ton. But like that week at Army All-American game, he was a freak. Now he was the only one that could block the kid from Miami, Jalen, the defensive end, and wound up being a first rounder.
Jalen
Phillips. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody on that West team could block him. And I remember we went to a meeting one day. I said, why don't we have a combo practice? So on the fly, the next day, we brought the D-line and O-line from the West over to the East practice.
Yeah.
And I remember Andrew Thomas flat out stoning him about 3 times. I remember looking at Barton Simmons. I went to Barton. I said,
yeah.
And Barton just kind of laughed. But yeah, that dude was a freak, man.
Yeah, I looked it up. Dylan Bell actually arrived on May 31st. And listen, he didn't start, but I mean, he was a contributor. It's tough enough to do, you know, that type, you know, a thing. So you start talking about starting 15 games as a true freshman after only arriving, you know, kind of in the summer. That's kind of ridiculous. It makes it that much more
offensive line. Yeah, played national championship game. Think about that.
One guy that's already made it on campus for the 2024 class, I don't know, he's one of 22 guys that have made it on campus already, is Joseph Jonah Ajanye. And Rusty, after some rankings updates, this man's a 5-star. All of a sudden, Georgia signed another 5-star on the defensive line, and there's no shortage of buzz about this kid. And he's I want to remind everybody, I know I harp on it, he just turned 17 in November. So less than 2 months ago, this cat was 16 years old. He won't turn 18 until almost the end of his regular season at Georgia. I believe it's November the 18th, if I'm not mistaken. So that regular season is going to wrap up this year, and he still won't be 18 years old. He still can't buy cigarettes.
So most high schools in Georgia, and let me say this without singling anybody out, most high-profile schools in Georgia, if they had somebody like that, he would be a rising junior, because he would have got held back at least once.
Yeah,
at least once. But with that time frame in the state of Georgia, as long as you turn 19 after May the 1st, you can play your senior year in Georgia. So that guy, he could have 2 more years of high school in Georgia. So it's nuts, man. But yeah, there's a lot of buzz about him, and certainly Chris Cole got a 5-star as well from Rivals.
Yeah,
is that right? So you look at him.
Both of them did. I wasn't gonna dip all into the Rivals rankings for them or anything. I wanted folks to maybe go around and look for where it came from. But yeah, you picked up two 5-stars from other outlets. That's pretty impressive.
Think about Glenn Schumann signed 2 5-star linebackers in this class.
Yeah,
so, I mean, and they got a great shot at Zayden Walker 2025 from Schley County.
And one of those linebackers is Joseph Jonah Ajanye's teammate Justin Williams. And like I told Roos the other night, you talk to people who are in the building, you talk to people who talk to people in the building, and you talk to people who are just kind of close to the program. They're hearing buzz. People will not shut up about this kid. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. Man, Justin Williams has impressed some folks and made some fans at Georgia already, dude.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I harp on, I remember shooting a segment with DJ Shockley, and DJ, damn good dog, and does his thing in Atlanta. But he kind of depends on me. Like, give me the next guy. Show me some tape. So we're sitting around in the studio, and I show him Justin Williams tape, and he goes, "Oh my God!" And I said, "Yeah, DJ." And then, by the way, this kid's top 10 in his class academically.
Yeah.
He's like, "What?" And then, dude, like, this guy you look at him and you look at today's game, and you look at Chris Cole, who's one of the fastest hurdlers in America, and you start thinking about these guys that it's just different game, man. Being able to run sideline to sideline, you get stretched out, you got to be able to cover. Two
guys that played a couple years of DB in high school.
Correct. Yeah. I didn't realize the other day till Nate Frazier came to Modern Day in 2022 as a DB. they had 2 running backs get hurt. He talks them into putting him at running back a little bit. And a year later, he's the #1 running back in America. Think about that.
He's the next Robert Edwards, man. That's what I'm hearing.
Whew.
That's what when you talk right there, that's what makes me think of how it goes. Dude, I'll never forget. I remember coming up to my first Georgia game in 1995, season opener against South Carolina. We're on the way. And I asked my dad, just happened to ask me, I said, hey, who's Georgia's running back? Because I'd remembered Garrison Hurst, and I wasn't into reading it at the time. I was only 12 years old. Yeah. And Garrison Hurst was the guy who brought me in, like really roped me into watching Georgia football. And I said, hey, who's Georgia's running back? He goes, they moved a cornerback. Robert Edwards is the running back. And then, I got an introduction that day. We ended up having a hard time parking. I got stuck in traffic in Watkinsville and got there about midway through the first quarter and still got to see Robert Edwards score 5 touchdowns. So
I tell you how old I am and how long I've followed it and how sick I am at times, things I remember. So with Georgia's 1993 recruiting class, guys that wind up being seniors in 97, those guys, Georgia was in on Julian Pittman and Andre Cooper, 2 5-stars from Florida, a wide receiver and a defensive lineman. And, back then, all the decisions came down to the last day on the 5-stars. That's where recruiting was insane. Well, Florida State gets them both. So you're sitting there at 11 a.m. on signing day, and you got 2 scholarships left. And Georgia offered Robert Edwards, who was going to Georgia Southern, who wound up being a first-round draft pick. And then they offered Brandon Tolbert, who was committed to Hawaii as a DB, who wound up being all SEC and playing 3 or 4 years in NFL. Think about those decisions and things that happened there. That because I didn't get 2 other kids, a couple of guys that were on the back burners, from the state of Georgia. They wound up offering them on the day of signing day. You ought to hear Robert tell the story. Brandon Tolbert's got a great story. The only reason he didn't sign with Hawaii that morning is because of the time change. He was going to sign with Hawaii at like 4 o'clock that afternoon. Georgia calls people at like noon. They go get Brandon out of class, ask him, did you sign any paperwork? He's like, no. What's going on? He ain't heard from Georgia in a month. They're like, what do you call your parents? They call his parents, offer scholarship, kid sign with Georgia. So that's crazy how that stuff unfolds.
And it's still, and listen, they're still equivalent to stories these days. I mean, I from what I understand, and I don't know the ins and outs of it, but there was a thing with Javon Bullard and Kamari Lassiter in their respective, in that class where I don't know that Georgia was sold always on taking both of them. I think they had to make some tough decisions on who to take and who not to take, and ended up taking both of them. And God, that worked out real well. So, you look at, some of the things that have happened in terms of taking other players and, man, it's just, there's so many what ifs out there, so many what ifs. So, hey, set the stage for us for the weekend before we let everybody go. What's going on this weekend? Any not necessarily, specific names, but anybody planning to be in town? I mean, what's going on?
Terry Bussey is the OV this weekend. And
okay.
That's the last 2024 kid that Georgia's really recruiting. And, he's a 5-star committed to Texas A&M. We reported Monday night that they were in home with him. He'd be on campus this weekend. And, it's going to be a hard pull. But with Georgia investing so much time in him this late, obviously they think they have a chance. Dante Williams coming over from USC had a relationship with him. T-Rob knew him a little bit from what I understand. So they're carrying that over. Glenn Schumann was out. Glenn Schumann's originally from that area, Houston, Texas. That's where he went to high school. So a lot of connections there for Georgia in that area. They've already signed 2 players out of that area this class, with Joseph and Justin Williams. So they're going to take a swing on him. We'll see. Obviously, I think the next couple of things we're going to follow will be the Terry Bussey official visit, and then next weekend we get into an unofficial visit. Multi-day unofficial visit for Juju Lewis, the 2025 quarterback now out of Carrollton.
Yeah, I've been seeing, honestly, I don't have like a good beat on it, but I've been seeing the 1st of next month as a date for a lot of different guys. I've seen February, you start seeing those graphics that On3 puts up. If you're not following them on Twitter, do so. Same for the DawgsHQ account. But you see that a lot on Twitter, is that February 3rd, Georgia. So a lot, that next weekend is going to be a pretty big
Yeah,
one.
that's some guy. That's it too. That's dead period. So the whole month of February is dead. So Georgia likes to get them on campus first. Remember 2 weeks ago they had a big junior day, and then they try to get them, on that last weekend. But Kirby doesn't do those deals where you have 100 kids. Those cattle shows those are over. They try to get 20 kids at a time. They can show attention to, really dig in, get to meet those kids, make sure they have a good time, and then they'll do another one in a couple of weeks.
Yep, and listen, that Terry Bussey visit's going to be an interesting one to follow. Julian Humphrey is another guy from that area too. So Georgia has some guys to kind of get in there and mix it up with him, and kind of have some familiarity. And we'll have it covered for you. We'll be back with you on Sunday.
Basketball.
Oh yeah, well, I guess we do need to talk a little hoops, man. 4-2 in the SEC, 14-5, I think now.
Yep.
Hey, that Georgia plays at Florida on Saturday at noon.
I tell you what, they win that game Saturday. Find a way.
That
Alabama game next Wednesday night in Athens will be that'll be rocking. And I think this is the best start for Georgia since 2016. And Mike White doing a great job. I'm not going to sit here and try to be the basketball expert, but the one thing I can tell you when you watch them is, man, they play defense, and they'll get after you, and that's something you hadn't seen in a long, long time. So
they adjusted last night. Like last night, LSU was getting open looks, and Georgia started running them off the 3-point line a lot better. I don't know exactly what went into it. I just know that the 3-point shooting for LSU kind of ticked down. Georgia started defending that better. Russell Chiwa came out with a massive play last night.
The big dude, man.
Yeah.
Georgia hadn't had that. I can't even tell you how long. Like, that dude is so big in person. And we'll mention one thing, not kind of out of our wheelhouse, but it's just fascinating to me. LSU and South Carolina playing women's basketball tonight. They're doing a game day show from there. It's the highest ticket price in the history of girls basketball. They were going for
amazing.
They were going for like 1,800 yesterday. I looked this morning; they're like 900 a piece this morning.
Wow! Masters tickets almost. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Good for them, man.
That's what I'm saying. That'd be Baton Rouge would be rocking tonight with that rematch.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be a lot of fun, man. A lot of star power on the court. A lot of star power with the coaches on the court in that one. One thing I do want to point out about Georgia basketball, and again, Palmer is more of our expert. He's the one boots on the ground there. Man, the one thing I loved about Georgia last night is they didn't play their best game and found a way to win. But in the first half, it was Silas Demery who kind of carried the team, put the team on his back for a stretch, and got Georgia a lead when it had fallen down 5-6 points. And then the second half, Russell Chiwa took over with not just scoring points, but going and taking a ball, going and hustle play, saving a pass from going out of bounds. I mean, they do it with different guys, different weeks. I mean, Jabri Abdul-Rahim scores 34 against Kentucky in a loss, and then comes back and struggles bad last night. Georgia still finds a way to win. Mike White's done a really good job, man. If this thing keeps trending up, I think he'll look back at his career whenever it's over and think about maybe this is one of the best coaching jobs he's ever done, and a guy that can flat do it. So the Bulldogs are on a good pace here, and I tell you what, I said it yesterday, a 2-0 week this week would go a long way for Georgia basketball, because I think projections here in the next couple of days are going to have the Dogs in the tournament, and they need to stay there.
They're right on it. So what we need to do is let Palmer cover all the regular season games, and when we find out Georgia's playing like Madison Square, me and you need to make sure that
that's what's happening.
We're representing this product and our company. So Palmer, keep it up, man, and get this team in the tournament so me and Jake can go cover a tournament game.
That's right, especially if it's somewhere nice. If it's if they go to Madison Square Garden, I'm gonna need to be there.
Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, we'll go get some pizza in Brooklyn. All right, y'all take it easy. We'll be back with you on Sunday with the Georgia show. Have a good one.